Hey there, I'm Jon Shaw, and this is my TED Talk. A little over a month ago, I found myself staring at my art supplies in my studio, and I wondered, how can I make my Genius Hour project about art in some way? I typically combine ink drawing and painting, and as I looked at my container of artist grade watercolors, I realized there was something here that I could work with. Watercolor is characterized by beautiful washes of translucent color. It's so soothing and satisfying. I wondered if I could replicate this in some way. It would not be perfect, and it may need tweaking and refinement and research, but that's the whole point of Genius Hour. I've always loved watercolor for its unpredictability. So why not introduce that to the engineering design process and see what happens? My goal, therefore, was simple. How can I create illustrations using alternate materials instead of traditional watercolor? My research focused on pigment alternatives. I utilized library books, such as The Wild Dyer by Abigail Booth, and websites such as lostincolor.com. Turns out there is no shortage of content on this topic. I established two routes to explore. One was to create organic material alternatives made from food and plant-based materials, and the other was to recreate actual watercolor pucks from DIY mixtures of household kitchen materials and food dye. I got to work on both avenues to see what would happen. I documented every step of the way with photos and video. You see, I'm a very visual person. I made the organic pigments with red onion, coffee, and turmeric. I also created a second round of pigment from mulberries that I gathered from my neighbor's tree. In order to create a usable paint, I steeped the contents in boiling water and then strained them through a cheesecloth. For the food coloring route, I followed suggestions from a handy YouTube video to combine cornstarch, corn syrup, baking soda, vinegar, and food coloring into a goopy mixture. This was then poured into an ice tray and left to cure for a few days. On the main research day, my kitchen looked more like a chemistry lab. This is where things started to split into two distinct pathways. The organic pigments were indeed successful. I used them to prepare sample swatches, just like I would with typical watercolor. I applied small paint puddles onto watercolor paper and let those dry. In the end, it worked to varying degrees. The colors were light, they were present, and they were relatively nice. It was a really neat moment. Here I was with four usable colors that I had prepared myself. The two biggest successes were definitely the mulberry purple and the turmeric yellow. Both were vibrant and aesthetically pleasing. Of course, it wasn't all easy or perfect. The coffee brown was really light, and the red onion even more so. I figured the red onion would become more saturated as the water evaporated, so I let it sit for a couple of days. Turns out this actually made it brown, and I discovered this was going to be a roadblock of sorts. The mulberry mixture eventually turned semi-grayish brown as well, and I realized I'm actually at the mercy of non-stable organic materials here. So the next step would be to establish a suitable and workable palette of colors. In the end, I found myself with a nice yellow and a semi-nice grayish purple brown. The other main challenge was the overall food dye mixture. I'm not sure if my mixture ratios needed tweaking or if it simply wasn't meant to be, but the end product was akin to painting with those little jelly packets you get at the local diner. It was goopy, sappy, wasn't really overall that pleasing to dip a paintbrush into or to make swatches out of. Perhaps I have my nose in the air a bit when it comes to art materials, but I immediately said to myself, I don't think this is going to work. And that's fine. This is part of the overall process. I'm sure there are opportunities to refine this approach if I wanted to and if I had the available time. For now, though, I'm shelving this pursuit and focusing on the organic pigments instead. The concluding takeaway is that there is indeed a usable alternative to my usual watercolor paints. How they hold up over time, how stable the colors are, and how they work when applied to paper are yet to be seen. But I certainly have established a usable item that will now be utilized to produce the final product. an actual ink and watercolor illustration on paper. I haven't decided yet what exactly I'll paint, but it'll likely be something organic like a flower or even a mulberry. That will be the next and final component of this project, which will be video documented and uploaded to the blog next week. I'm honestly really excited to see how that turns out. Maybe it'll be a success, maybe it'll be garbage. But then again, that's all part of the process. So that's my TED Talk. I hope you enjoyed what I have to share, and I hope you'll check back in a week to see how the final product turns out, because I can't wait to share it with you. Oh, and remember, the next time you brew some coffee or pick your neighbor's mulberries, think about more than just the organics you're about to consume. Maybe you're sitting on an entire creative experiment. Take care.